Welcome to Shannons Club TV, the show for all motoring fans to share a blast from the past on Australian roads and racetracks.
In each episode we offer a unique perspective on our feature car's performance on the road and in competition. We'll also take a road trip with the proud owner and get the latest news from the Shannons auctions team.
Right now though, the German thoroughbreds that set new engineering benchmarks for high-performance sedans. The 6-cylinder E28 and E34 BMW M5s.
In 1985, BMW answered an automotive question no one had yet asked. If Ferrari and Porsche weren't interested in creating a four-door supercar, well, why shouldn't BMW? The first E28 M5 came to market 5 years after BMW ceased production of the delectable M1 and used that supercar's dry-sumped 3.5 litre inline-six. Here was the most wolf in sheep's clothing performance sedan you could imagine, almost bland in its demeanour, but it was a cracker. Maximum power was 210 kilowatts in an era when even 100 kilowatts less than that was considered healthy. For example, the Alfa Romeo GT-V6 had 117 kilowatts. The M5 took 6 seconds to get to 100 kilometres an hour and had a top speed of 240. No other 1985 sedan could eclipse 220. Fewer than 2,500 E28 M5s were produced and the model was not sold locally. In September 1988, the much sleeker E34 M5 arrived, and this one, blessedly, was sold here with 232 kilowatts. 232 kilowatts. It ran the 400 metres in 14.8 seconds. As on its predecessor, the sole transmission on offer was a 5-speed manual gearbox. Of course, it was superior to anything from HSV, but the M5 had put on 100 kilos. Mark, an M5's appearance in the 1992 Bathurst 12-hour was certainly a big departure from the kinds of cars that BMW usually race.
Yeah, it sure was. But you've got to remember in 1992 in the Australian Touring Car Championship, the BMW M3s and the Nissan GTRs had been lumbered with big weight penalties by CAMS to try and level the playing field with the Commodores and Sierras. Now, obviously BMW Australia weren't happy with their cars being handicapped. So the opportunity to enter another form of racing was treated with great enthusiasm, even though this was not the company's nominated race car and it had to run in showroom stock trim, which I'll get to a bit later on.
Absolutely. Typifying BMW's thorough approach were those striking 17-inch alloys with their unusual covers. At first glance, they resembled hubcaps, but were in fact race-style cast magnesium centres with integral turbine blades mounted on obscured 5-spoke black alloys. These M-system centres were said to increase airflow to the brakes by 25%. For model year 1992, the engine was enlarged to 3.8 litres and developed 250 kilowatts. In 1994, a 6-speed gearbox replaced the 5-speeder and conventional 18-inch alloy wheels were fitted. A total of 12,224 E34 M5 sedans were produced, all of them, like their predecessor and unlike their successors, hand-built. The first two M5s faced no direct rivals, but in subsequent decades, BMW's arch opponents have thrown up serious alternatives. Arguably, assorted Mercedes AMG offerings now carry greater charisma than their M-car rivals. Mark, the success of the M5 in showroom condition at Bathurst tells us a lot about the thoroughness of BMW's engineering, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does, absolutely. And as a high-performance Grand Tourer, it was without peer. The appearance of a four-door, six-cylinder BMW in the 1992 Bathurst 12-hour was unexpected, but not unprecedented. Several examples of the German marque's new 6 model competed in under 3-litre Group C touring car racing in the 1970s, including several appearances at the Bathurst 1000. The following decade, the E28 5 Series was BMW's frontline fighter in the 1982 European Touring Car Championship, winning not only the ETCC title, but also the prestigious Spa 24-hour. Although replaced by the 635 CSI Coupe the following year, the 5 Series sedan had proven its performance pedigree in competition. This no doubt inspired the company's motorsport division to design and hand-build E28 and later E34 M5s for road use, with prodigiously powerful 3.5-litre inline sixes. John, you know, BMW's performance heritage, it's so closely tied to these superlative six-cylinder engines, isn't it?
It is, but you know the interesting thing was when BMW was conceiving a new office block for the 20th century, they had 4 towers to celebrate their great fame with four-cylinder engines, because Formula One and stuff. But it seems that whatever they turned their attention to in terms of engines, they succeeded. 4 cylinders and then 6 cylinders. Later they V8s, V10s, V12.
But look at the motorsport success of inline sixes.
Inline sixes.
Back to the new six, the 3-litre CSL.
Right back to then,
635 CSI.
Yep.
Just fantastic cars.
Yes,
and I think probably the ultimate compliment paid to them was by Toyota when they were developing the reborn Supra. Had to have an inline 6. Toyota, with their engineering standards, saying to BMW, you guys do that better than anyone in the world.
Well, there you go.
And a real endorsement, wasn't it?
Certainly was, yeah.
The lone E34 M5, entered in the 1992 Bathurst 12-hour for showroom stock road cars, was a genuine works entry steered by BMW Australia's Group A touring car stars Tony Longhurst and Alan Jones. At $155,000 in 1992 money, the M5 was by far the most expensive car in the race and red-hot favourite to win its class against Falcon and Commodore rivals. It was also a dark horse for outright victory if the equally new and untested twin-turbo Mazda RX-7s struck trouble. From the pre-dawn start, the M5 was in a class of its own. After 90 minutes, it was third outright. After 5 hours, it had a 2-lap class lead and briefly led the race. However, its insatiable appetite for brake pads cost valuable time replacing them during pit stops, and with that, any chance of outright victory over Mazda. Even so, the M5's otherwise untroubled performance over 12 hours was astonishing, beaten only by a twin-turbo RX-7 for line honours and winning its class by a staggering margin of 30 laps, or more than 186 kilometres. Top that, Mr. Brock. It was another emphatic demonstration of the 6-cylinder 5 Series sporting pedigree and compelling proof that the M5, although primarily designed as a Grand Tourer, was more than worthy of displaying BMW's M for Motorsport badge. Remember to join the Shannons Club, where you can connect with other enthusiasts around the country.
My name is Clive Massell. Behind me is my BMW E28 M5. And standing next to me is the M5 E34. The appeal of this car, number one, was the challenge of getting it to the condition that you see it today. It was in pretty sad condition. It had been neglected, but when we started bringing it back to life, I realized the car was in exceptionally good condition. Very sound bodywork, good interior. I spent approximately 2 years cleaning it up, getting it to show standards. We've just refreshed it, polished it up, got the interior right, totally recommissioned all the liquids, the brake system, the clutch system, the hydraulics. Other than that, it's really as you see it. 3.5 twin cam motor. Although it's very sedate and silent, once you get the car on song, it's an amazing feeling. The only way to enjoy these cars is to drive them very spiritedly. It's an absolute treat. Driving it through the hills and listening to this incredible sound, it's like a symphony. I've been involved with Shannons for several years. Their knowledge of what classic car owners need is just in another league. Out of choice, I wouldn't like to sell either of them. The E34 in particular is very, very underrated in terms of value. This is a sleeper. This is a great, great car.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon is here with all the latest on the E28 and E34 M5s. Welcome, mate.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Welcome, Chris. The M5, the E28, when it came out, what an extraordinary car, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Ahead of its time, I think, compared to what we had here in the country.
Way ahead, yeah. I mean, I went to the motor show in Italy in 1984, and anything that would do 200 was fast in those days. And the M5 came out and it just blew everything out of the water. It was
incredible.
Just so much quicker than any other sedan, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was never sold here, the E28.
No.
Which is a pity, isn't it? I think, we have seen a number of them come into the country over the years, either out of the UK or out of South Africa or New Zealand. And it's nice to see a really well-maintained, preserved car.
But we did get the E34 here.
Yes.
Does that make them special? The E28 and the E34 were the only M5s built with inline sixes. Does that, everything else was V8s and we had a V10. Does that make them special in some way? They're special to me because they're sixes. Is that the way the market sees it?
Look, I think they're special with BMW collectors overall. I think, there is a soft spot for the E28s and the E34s. Even though we didn't get the E28s in Australia, the E28s are probably still, today, in today's market, valued more sought after and valued higher than an E34.
Is that right?
But if you find a very good E34, low Ks, well maintained, that's a very sought after car as well.
That was a beautiful car too. I drove that when it was new. It was an absolutely gorgeous piece of kit. A very understated performance car.
But what I couldn't get over was the unbelievable performance of that engine.
Yes.
A 3.5 litre inline six. The hottest HSV at the time had 200 kilowatts. This thing had 232. And the engine was 1.5 litres smaller.
Yeah.
I mean, the efficiency of that car was
BMW
beyond
does know
belief.
a thing or two about building engines.
Performance engines,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Look, I think we were seeing what Germany was capable of building at the time. When motorsport products were all still built in Germany, that's, it was definitely ahead of its time, I think, performance-wise.
Certainly was. And we must also mention, even though this model wasn't sold in Australia as well, the E34 M wagon. I mean, that is a really rare car now because they didn't build many of them. No. And that was the first motorsport wagon.
And when you think about that most famous of automotive initials, M, it really meant something when BMW put the M badge on those cars in the early days. Doesn't mean quite so much nowadays on some of them.
It did. It really, put them apart from a standard car.
They were hand-built.
Hand-built. Engine, suspension, brakes, the whole package was just incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone's after a six-cylinder, an E28 or an E34 M5, what should they be looking for? Is Australian delivery important, or where does all that sit?
Well, obviously we don't have Australian delivered E28s.
E28s, but the E34.
But I think try and find a very good E28 that, especially if it's come out of the UK, that hasn't got the rust issues. Or the corrosion issues underneath.
Okay.
But again, a good service history, well maintained by the right people, and I think condition overall is important with that.
Yeah.
E34 is a bit easier to find in the market, but again, same thing. Well maintained. Those BMW engines require regular oil changes. That's what keeps the performance level up on these cars is regular maintenance. So find a car that's been well maintained, well looked after, and that's probably
great
advice on that.
Good advice.
Very good. Thanks, Chriso.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And remember, with all the latest on Shannons auctions, check out the Shannons Club website. If you want a lasting memory of the BMW M5s in competition, check out the huge archive at autopix.com.au. John, reflecting on this car, for me, there was just a real magic in those six-cylinder M5s. For me, as an enthusiast, I wish BMW had just kept them as inline sixes right through. So the M5 was this ultra high performance six-cylinder sedan, throughout its life.
I mean, and look at the success Ford Australia had by doing just that with the XR6 and then later the Ford Performance Vehicle Typhoon and so on.
Yep.
Yes, and there is still something very special about a good inline six, and no one ever does a better inline six than BMW.
Yeah.
And they preserved it as a point of difference. When Mercedes and most others went to V6s, they stuck with the inline six.
And I just think, as time goes on, this sort of engine, an inline six, multi-cam, multi-valve, is going to be just really sought after.
It's interesting too that the most collectible probably of all the M5s is the first one, the E28.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, because all the models after E28 and E34 were the sixes. Everything after even had a V10 in there.
Yes.
V8s, but these two just stand out on their own. I think that's really, really special.
I agree.
Time.
Yes, absolutely.
We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the superlative BMW M5 six-cylinder models. Hope you can join us next time for Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.